Hello everyone, welcome to the QuesterMage or Mage's Quest to talk about games. In today's video I want to talk about, does Arcade1UP need SEGA for 3D? With rumours of a new SEGA cabinet coming for Arcade1UP, it started to make me think of possible future cabinets for the two companies. We have a few videos talking about games, mostly arcade and retro on the channel. If you'd like to watch these, then please take a look. If you like our content and want to help the channel grow, please click that like, subscribe and notification bell for more of our content in the future. If you're one of the 90+ subscribers on the channel so far, thank you very much. It's literally the only way this channel can grow. Arcade1UP have over the years made at-home arcades a reality for a lot of fans while enjoying success, making 3/4 scale machines which were easy-ish to put together at home and cheaper than the original arcade machines. They now have a long list of 3/4 scale arcades among other products. If we take a look at some of the companies which Arcade1UP have partnered with so far, that would be Atari, Bandai Namco, Capcom, Data East, Konami, Marvel, Midway, Rare, Sega, Star Wars, and others. They are indeed in good company and seemingly accomplished in acquiring big name licenses for their cabinets. Also showing an aptitude to bring third parties together to work on projects. We have examples of this, but not limited to, with Atari and Star Wars, Nickelodeon and Konami, and Capcom and Marvel. When we're talking about older arcade games, technologically speaking, Arcade1UP have shown that they can make these work with their current partners and chipsets. Which brings me to the topic of this video. Does Arcade1UP need SEGA for 3D? SEGA have a lot of games in the 3D arcade space and arguably some of the most popular. Some of these machines are still found in arcades today. If Arcade1UP are to move to the next generation of arcade games, or to the mid and late 90s, they will need the titles to do so. When looking at the mid 90s and onwards, here are some of the games that I would see a lot in actual arcades. Daytona USA, the Mortal Kombat, House of the Deads, Metal Slug, Street Fighters, Virtual Fighters. Obviously there were many more, but mostly I saw SEGA 3D arcade games. If we're taking a look at some of SEGA's titles and chipsets Arcade1UP have licensed so far, we will see that in the 1980s we had Outrun, Shinobi, Altered Beast, Power Drift, Golden Axe, Wrestle War, and Turbo Outrun. In the 1990s, we've seen Outrunners and Golden Axe, The Revenge of Death Adder. Arcade1UP have shown that they can and have incorporated the games from these SEGA chipsets to their hardware, each trying something new, in my eyes at least. The Golden Axe machine is where we started hearing about the new BOE monitor. Outrun was one of the first in the driving cabinet form factor, which surprisingly had not one but two SKUs, a sit-down and a stand-up variant. If they are planning to move to the 3D era, I think they are going to need SEGA. Obviously, there are other games and companies in that era for Arcade1UP to make machines. We've seen some of that already. The relationship with SEGA is there, but moving into 3D would bring its own problems for Arcade1UP. One of which will be an increase in demand of games from that era. I'll show a list of some of these games on screen now. As you can see, through the 90s and into the early 2000s, SEGA used these boards to make some of the most popular arcade games at the time. From the 1990s, SEGA started to make games with their M1, M2, M3 and Naomi chipsets, none of which have been shown to work on Arcade1UP's current hardware so far. Can you imagine Arcade1UP moving to make 3/4 or full-scale arcade machines from this era without some of these titles? I think the demand from users would be substantial for some of these games if they were not part of Arcade1UP's next generation of at-home arcades. Imagine Arcade1UP with an improved board and not having titles like Crazy Taxi, House of the Dead, Sega Rally, Virtual Fighter. They could even refresh their current cabinets into the Aliens arcade games which were put into arcades by Sega, or maybe the Sega Star Wars trilogy, the refresh model being one that Arcade1UP utilizes. So in my opinion, I think yes, Arcade1UP does need SEGA for 3D games. Again, there are other companies and games. Examples of these are the Capcom Alpha games or the Arc System Works fighting games. Keeping in mind, some of these were actually in the arcades running on SEGA's Naomi board. Also, SEGA would be a great partner for Arcade1UP in this era, not only for their arcade games, but also for their expertise in implementing games from their own hardware onto Arcade1UP's. There are two more quick side notes I'd like to talk about in regards to SEGA and Arcade1UP. Which form factor could they use? Could we see an Astro City shape from Arcade1UP? The shape of the next cabinet could be an Astro City or Candy Cab. I know I'm showing a picture of the Astro City Mini, but it's just an example. It would be great to see a 3/4 scale version of these machines in the home space. Would it be exactly the same? I don't think so. But I do think there is a possibility that Arcade1UP could attempt a similar shape, but with a more rectangular look. What do you think? Possibly, possibly not. Like it or hate it? Please let me know down in the comments. Secondly, the ability to add games in the future. A big benefit for the arcade owners having Astro Cities was the ability to change games inside without having to buy a new cabinet each time. Will this be the first time Arcade1UP adopts a similar strategy? Could we see X games now and more games in the future which you could buy in a digital or physical form, the latter actually being plugged into the machine? I think they are hesitant to have an online store, so physical media might be the way to go if they were to implement this idea. The more likely outcome is no, they won't. They will simply make several versions of this machine with slight differences each time, like a different marquee. Lastly, there are a few 2D SEGA games that, even though they are console games, I think would be cool to have in an arcade form factor, at least as secondary titles. I know a lot of users do not like this idea, but more options are always a good thing, at least in my opinion. The marquee games could be Shinobi, Shadow Dancer, Golden Axe, or Space Harrier, with the secondary titles being console games but suiting the arcade theme, like the Streets of Rage trilogy, the Sonic games, the Golden Axes, Comic Zone, or Gunstar Heroes. What do you think of machines like these, with Sega arcade games being the headline game and console games being secondary? Again, I don't mind console games being secondary, as I currently play Streets of Rage 1, 2, 3, and 4 with an arcade stick in front of a TV very comfortably. It's just missing the arcade form factor. So what do you think of Arcade1UP needing Sega for 3D? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? How would you change it? Please leave your impression down in the comment section. But that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to help the channel, please click that like, subscribe, and notification bell for more of our content in the future. And until then, thanks again.